My leg is stuck in the stones. Cowboy, please save me. I'll do anything, even bear you a child." The sun hung high in the sky, pouring a golden light over the rugged landscape. The desert stretched endlessly, a sea of rocky hills and scattered shrubs, broken only by narrow dirt paths that wound between towering cliffs. Leela, a young woman with a restless heart and a love for adventure, had been traveling alone for days. She carried a small pack on her back, worn from constant use, and her boots were dusty from the long walk across uneven terrain. Despite the harshness of the desert, she had a sense of excitement. Every step brought her closer to the unknown, and that unknown had always called to her. She moved carefully along the narrow path, her eyes scanning the rocks for the safest footing. The stones beneath her boots were loose and jagged, each step a small gamble. She loved the freedom of walking alone, feeling the wind brush against her face and listening to the soft rustle of the desert grasses. Yet the solitude had its own dangers, and Leela knew it well. She always told herself that she was careful, that she would never make a mistake. But sometimes the desert had its own plans. Leela's mind wandered as she walked. She thought about the small town she had left behind, the people she knew, and the life she had paused for this journey. There was a part of her that felt guilty for leaving, but a larger part thrilled at the independence she now enjoyed. She imagined the cliffs in front of her, imagining herself standing at the edge and looking down at the valley below. There was something about the height, the feeling of being on top of the world, that made her pulse quicken with excitement. She loved that mix of fear and exhilaration, even if it meant taking risks. As she approached a narrow ravine, Leela's attention wavered for just a moment. The rocks shifted under her boots, and before she could adjust, her leg slipped between two large stones. Pain shot through her ankle and up her leg, sharp and sudden. She cried out, but the sound felt small against the vastness of the desert. The rocks had trapped her foot so tightly that she could barely move. Panic crept into her chest as she struggled, twisting and pulling, but the more she tried, the more stuck she became. Leela's breaths came fast, her chest rising and falling in quick bursts. She looked around, hoping to see another traveler or some sign of life, but the desert was silent except for the occasional whisper of wind. Her heart pounded as she realized the seriousness of her situation. She had been careful, she had told herself she would watch every step, but now it felt as if the desert had played a trick on her. The isolation pressed down on her like a heavy blanket, and a chill ran through her despite the warmth of the sun. Hours passed, or perhaps only minutes, Leela couldn't tell. Time seemed to stretch endlessly as she tried again and again to free her leg. Each attempt brought more pain, and her energy began to drain. Her fingers scraped against the rough edges of the stones, leaving tiny cuts, and dust settled in the scratches, stinging with every movement. Leela tried to calm herself, repeating words she had once heard from her grandmother. Patience, always patience. Think, then act. But patience was hard to hold on to when every muscle ached and the sun was unforgiving overhead. The desert seemed alive now, every sound amplified in her mind. The wind whistled between the rocks, carrying with it a faint, distant rustle that made her heart leap with hope and dread. Could it be someone nearby? Could someone hear her? She shouted again, her voice cracking from strain. "Hello, is anyone there, please?" "Help me," the echo bounced back from the cliffs, a lonely answer that did nothing to ease her fear. She tried to shift her weight, thinking that perhaps if she moved slowly, carefully, she could wiggle her leg free. But the stones held fast, biting into her skin and making each movement agonizing. Her pack, which had seemed so light when she first started her journey, now pressed against her back like a heavy stone. She wished she could just lie down and rest, but she knew that staying still was not a solution. The sun was relentless, and dehydration loomed as a new threat. Her lips were dry, her throat parched, and each gulp of hot air burned slightly as she breathed. Her thoughts turned frantic. She imagined what might happen if no one came. Would she be stuck here for hours, days? The thought made her stomach churn. Leela had always considered herself strong and resourceful, but now she felt small and fragile, at the mercy of the desert and the unyielding stones. Her mind raced with plans. What if she could loosen one stone at a time? What if she could pull herself backward toward the path she had come from? Every plan seemed impossible, and yet she clung to hope like a lifeline. It was in that moment of desperation that she saw a flicker of movement on the horizon. A small figure riding across the sunlit rocks came into view. Leela's heart leapt. Could it be real? Could it be someone coming to help? She called out again, louder this time, her voice filled with urgency. Help, please. Someone please help me? The figure adjusted their path, heading straight toward her. Relief and fear mingled in her chest. Relief that she might be rescued, fear because she had no idea who this stranger might be. As the figure drew closer, Leela could see the details more clearly. A wide-brimmed hat shaded the rider's face, and a long coat flapped in the wind. The horse moved steadily with a confidence that suggested experience. Leela felt a mix of awe and cautious hope. She wanted to believe that this person could free her, that this journey through fear might end soon. She called out again, trying to sound strong despite the pain and exhaustion. Please, over here, I'm stuck. The rider slowed as they approached, bringing the horse to a stop a short distance away. Leela could now see a glint of determination in the stranger's eyes, a calm that contrasted sharply with her own panic. The cowboy, or perhaps cowgirl, though the figure appeared male, looked at her carefully, assessing the situation. Leela tried to explain, her words tumbling out in a rush. My leg gets stuck between the stones. I can't move. Please, can you help me? Her voice trembled with a mixture of fear and urgency. The stranger dismounted with ease, moving quickly to her side. Stay calm, the cowboy said, voice steady and reassuring. We'll get you out. Don't try to move too much. There was something about the tone that made Leela breathe a little easier. Even in her pain, she could sense a competence, a strength that gave her hope. The cowboy knelt by her leg, examining the way it was trapped, and then began testing the stones carefully. Leela watched, her pulse still racing, every nerve alert, hoping beyond hope that help had truly arrived. Minutes passed as the cowboy worked methodically, testing the rocks, shifting one slightly, then another. Leela could feel the tension in the air, the delicate balance of strength and strategy. She wanted to move to help, but the cowboy's instructions were clear. Stay still and let me do the work. Leela obeyed, gritting her teeth against the pain and marveling at the patience of this stranger. She had never felt so vulnerable, and yet there was a strange comfort in being taken seriously, in being treated with care. As the cowboy continued to work, Leela's thoughts drifted. She thought about her journey, about the risks she had taken, and about the lessons the desert had taught her. She realized that sometimes strength was not just about physical ability. It was also about trust, patience, and the willingness to accept help when it was needed. She had always believed in doing everything on her own, but now, lying here with her leg trapped, she understood the value of cooperation and human connection. Finally, with a careful push and a shift of the rocks, Leela felt her leg loosen. Pain shot through her ankle, sharp and sudden, but she could move her foot. Relief flooded through her body like cool water. She pulled gently, testing the freedom of movement, and found that she could stand. The cowboy stepped back, nodding with satisfaction. There you go. You're free, he said calmly, a hint of a smile in his eyes. Leela breathed deeply, feeling a mix of exhaustion, relief, and gratitude. She looked at the cowboy, wanting to say something meaningful, but words failed her. She could only nod, her eyes conveying the depth of her thanks. The desert seemed less intimidating now, the rocks less threatening, because she had seen firsthand that help could arrive, that courage and skill could overcome even the most stubborn obstacles. As she stretched her sore leg and adjusted her pack, Leela felt a spark of determination. She had survived the first challenge of the journey, and she knew that more might come. But she also knew that she was not alone, that there were people in the world capable of kindness and strength. And as the cowboy mounted his horse and prepared to continue on his path, Leela realized that this encounter had changed her. The desert was still vast and harsh, but she had discovered something even more important: the resilience of the human spirit and the unexpected heroes who might appear when least expected. Leela watched the cowboy adjust his hat and swing back onto his horse. The figure was calm, collected, and almost silent, yet there was a sense of power in the way he moved. He had rescued her with such ease that Leela couldn't help but feel both relief and admiration. For a long moment, she just stood there, her sore leg trembling slightly, her chest still heavy from the stress and adrenaline of being trapped. She realized that she had never been so grateful for a stranger's help before. Are you going to be all right? The cowboy asked, his voice steady but kind, breaking the silence. His eyes, shaded by the brim of his hat, seemed to study her with quiet concern. Leela nodded, though she could feel a twinge of discomfort in her ankle. She tried to step forward and found that the muscles were stiff but thankfully functional. She took a careful step, then another, testing her balance. I think so, she managed, her voice still slightly shaky. The cowboy's gaze didn't leave her. You should rest for a bit before you go any further. This terrain isn't easy, especially after an accident. He paused and then added, Do you have water? You need to drink. Leela reached for her pack and pulled out a small canteen, grateful that she had thought ahead. She handed it to him first. Thank you for helping me. She stopped, unsure what else to say. Words seemed inadequate to express her relief and gratitude. The cowboy took a small sip from the canteen and returned it to her. You're lucky. The stones could have done a lot more damage if you weren't careful, he said. There was a slight edge of warning in his tone, but it wasn't harsh. It was as if he wanted her to understand the seriousness of the situation without frightening her further. Leela nodded again, her thoughts a little scattered. She knew he was right. She had been reckless, even if she hadn't meant to be. She glanced at him more closely now. The cowboy's face was sharp, with strong features framed by a few days' worth of stubble. His eyes were dark and steady, as if nothing could shake him. There was an air of mystery about him that made her curious. She wondered who he was, where he came from, and why he was out here alone in the desert. Leela had traveled through many towns and had met many people, but there was something different about this man. He seemed almost like he belonged to the land itself, quiet, strong, and capable. Can you walk? He asked after a moment, breaking her thoughts. She hesitated, testing her leg once more, then nodded. Yes, slowly, but I think I can manage. He extended a hand to help her, and she took it, appreciating the support. With his guidance, she moved carefully, each step measured and deliberate. The stones were still treacherous in places, but with him by her side, the path seemed a little less intimidating. As they walked, Leela tried to start a conversation, though she wasn't sure where to begin. Do you live around here? She asked tentatively. The cowboy's eyes flicked toward her, and for the first time she caught a glimpse of a small, almost imperceptible smile. I travel, he said simply. Sometimes work, sometimes just the road. I know this land well, though. There was no hint of arrogance in his voice, just plain honesty. Leela nodded, intrigued. She had always admired people who moved confidently through the world, people who seemed to belong wherever they went. She wondered what his life had been like, what stories he could tell, and what experiences had shaped him into the calm, capable man who had just saved her. Her curiosity mixed with a sense of gratitude, and she found herself opening up, even to a stranger. I was just exploring, she admitted, her voice quieter now. I love being out here even though it can be dangerous. I wanted to see what's beyond the mountains, beyond the paths people usually take. The cowboy nodded, listening without interrupting. The desert is beautiful, she continued, but it can be unforgiving if you're not careful. I guess I learned that the hard way today. He gave a short laugh, low and almost rough, but it wasn't unkind. That you did, he said. The desert teaches lessons, but it doesn't give warnings twice. You need to be ready for anything. There was a seriousness in his tone now, and Leela felt the weight of his words. She realized that her adventure, which had felt so exciting, also carried real risks. And yet she wasn't ready to give up. She wanted to learn, to explore, and to understand the desert in all its beauty and danger. They continued walking, the sun gradually moving lower in the sky. Shadows stretched long across the rocks, and the air began to cool slightly, offering a welcome relief from the intense heat of the afternoon. Leela felt a growing sense of calm, a sense that she was no longer alone in this vast, empty land. The cowboy walked beside her, silent at times, but always alert, always aware of their surroundings. There was a rhythm to his movements, a steady confidence that made her feel safe. After some time, they came to a small ridge overlooking a wide valley below. The view was breathtaking. Rolling hills of golden sand and clusters of rocky outcrops spread out as far as the eye could see. The sun cast warm colors across the landscape, painting the desert in hues of orange and gold. Leela paused, taking it all in, feeling both small and connected to the vastness around her. It's beautiful, she whispered, almost to herself. The cowboy stood silently beside her, not saying much but seeming to share in the moment. There was a quiet understanding between them now, a shared experience that needed no words. Leela felt a strange sense of comfort in his presence, a feeling that maybe, just maybe, everything would be all right. She still had a long journey ahead, but for now she could rest and take in the view. I should probably set up camp soon, the cowboy said eventually, breaking the silence. Night comes quickly out here and it can get cold. There's water nearby and a good spot to rest for the evening. He gestured toward a cluster of rocks and a small patch of sand that looked sheltered. Leela followed his direction, relieved at the idea of a safe place to stay. As they set up a small camp, Leela noticed the care the cowboy took in arranging things. He checked the surroundings carefully, making sure they were safe from wildlife and that there were no hidden dangers. Then he built a small fire, using skill and patience to gather wood and spark a flame. The crackle of the fire was comforting, a small island of warmth and light in the vast desert. Leela sat near it, still tired from her ordeal, and watched the flames dance. The cowboy handed her a small portion of water and some dried fruit he had brought with him. "You need to eat something," he said gently. "You've lost a lot of energy, and you need to regain it before nightfall." Leela accepted the food gratefully, eating slowly as she felt the warmth of the fire and the presence of the cowboy beside her. She realized that in this moment she wasn't just relieved to be safe. She felt a growing sense of connection, a trust forming between them. They sat in quiet conversation for a while, sharing small stories about their lives. Leela learned that the cowboy had traveled many lands, helping people and working odd jobs along the way. His life had been full of challenges, but he carried himself with a calm strength that impressed her. She shared a little about herself, about her love of exploration and the curiosity that had led her to the desert. There was no judgment, no pretense, just a simple, honest exchange between two people who had found themselves together by chance. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the desert changed. The colors deepened, the shadows grew longer, and a soft wind began to blow, carrying the scent of the earth and rocks. Leela felt a sense of peace, a feeling she hadn't experienced in a long time. She was still wary, still cautious, but she also knew that she was not alone. The cowboy's presence had transformed the wilderness from a place of danger to one of potential safety and companionship. Night fell completely, and the stars emerged, sparkling brilliantly in the clear desert sky. Leela lay back on a blanket, gazing up at the endless expanse above her. The vastness was humbling, yet comforting. She realized that the desert, with all its challenges and beauty, was teaching her more than she had imagined. And beside her, the cowboy tended the fire quietly, a steady guardian in the night. For the first time since her accident, Leela allowed herself to relax. She felt a mixture of gratitude, curiosity, and anticipation. The desert was still full of unknowns, but with this unexpected companion, she felt ready to face whatever came next. She didn't know where this journey would lead, but she understood one thing clearly. Sometimes, the greatest adventures begin when help appears in the most unexpected form. Morning came quietly to the desert, with soft sunlight spilling over the rocky hills and casting long shadows across the sand. Leela woke slowly, the warmth of the fire's ashes lingering against her back. Her leg ached, a dull reminder of the stones that had trapped her the day before, but the discomfort was manageable now. She stretched carefully, testing her movements and feeling the stiffness loosen. The desert seemed different in the morning light, less threatening, more alive, as if it held its own quiet rhythm. Beside her, the cowboy was already awake, tending to the small fire he had carefully rekindled. He moved with the ease and precision of someone accustomed to the outdoors, gathering dry wood and arranging it so the flames would grow steadily. Leela watched for a moment, fascinated by the simple, confident way he handled the tasks. There was a calmness about him that she hadn't noticed before, a patience and skill that made the harsh desert seem less intimidating. "Good morning," she said softly, trying to keep her voice steady. The cowboy looked up and nodded, a slight smile touching his lips. "Morning." "You slept well?" he asked, his tone careful but not overly formal. Leela nodded, stretching her arms and wincing slightly as her muscles protested. "I think so. It's peaceful here, but my leg still hurts." He stepped closer, examining her leg with a gentle but professional touch. "It'll be sore for a while. The stones were sharp and you were stuck for hours, but you're strong, you'll recover quickly." His reassurance brought her a little comfort. She had been worried that the injury would slow her down, that she might be helpless again, but his confidence helped her believe in her own strength. After tending the fire and preparing a small breakfast of dried fruit and water, the cowboy gestured for Leela to eat as well. They sat quietly, the morning air cool against their skin, and the desert slowly waking around them. Birds called in the distance, and the faint rustle of small animals moving through the rocks added life to the stillness. Leela felt a sense of calm she hadn't felt in a long time, a feeling that perhaps this day would be different from the chaos of yesterday. Once they had eaten, the cowboy stood and offered his hand to help Leela up. "We should get moving before the sun rises too high," he said. "The heat will come fast, and you don't want to be trapped in the wrong spot during midday." She accepted his hand gratefully, feeling the steadiness of his grip. With him guiding her, she managed to walk more confidently than the day before. The path ahead was rocky but manageable, and for the first time, Leela began to feel a spark of hope that she could continue her journey safely. As they walked, Leela tried to make conversation. "You travel alone a lot, don't you?" she asked. "Doesn't it get lonely?" The cowboy glanced at her, considering his words carefully. "It does, sometimes, but the road teaches you to notice things you might miss in towns or cities. The wind, the stars, the animals, there's a lot to learn if you pay attention." Leela nodded thoughtfully, realizing he was right. She had been so focused on getting somewhere, on exploring, that she hadn't fully appreciated the quiet beauty around her. The conversation shifted naturally as they continued. Leela spoke about the mountains she had crossed and the valleys she had seen, and the cowboy listened attentively, occasionally offering comments or asking questions that showed he was genuinely interested. She began to feel a sense of camaraderie, a bond forming out of shared experience and mutual respect. There was a rhythm to their movements and words, a steady flow that made the long walk less exhausting and more engaging. At one point, the path narrowed and Leela had to navigate a steep incline. Her leg protested and she stumbled slightly. The cowboy was immediately at her side, steadying her with a firm hand. "Careful," he said quietly. "Take it slow. One step at a time." She breathed in deeply and followed his instructions, moving deliberately and carefully. When she reached the top, she looked back at him with a grateful smile. "Thank you," she said softly. He nodded, offering no words of flattery, just a calm acknowledgement that made her feel supported without being patronized. The terrain grew more challenging as the day progressed. Loose rocks, uneven ground, and occasional sharp rises tested Leela's strength and endurance. The cowboy stayed close, always alert, guiding her through the trickiest sections. At times, he would quietly offer advice. "Shift your weight to the left here," or "Step on the larger rock, it's steadier." His knowledge of the land was impressive, and Leela felt a deep appreciation for his presence. She realized that she had never traveled like this before, not just exploring, but truly relying on someone who understood the desert intimately. As the sun climbed higher, the heat intensified. They stopped near a small, shaded area under an outcropping of rocks to rest and drink water. Leela sat down, panting lightly, while the cowboy checked the surrounding area for safety. The desert could be unforgiving, and she understood that his vigilance was necessary. As she sipped water and caught her breath, she glanced at him and noticed a flicker of thoughtfulness in his eyes. He seemed to be thinking about more than just the path ahead, perhaps the challenges of the day or the unpredictability of the desert itself. After a short break, they continued, moving steadily through the landscape. Leela's confidence grew with each step, though she remained aware of her limitations. The cowboy's guidance allowed her to navigate the rough terrain without fear, and she began to notice the small details of the desert, the patterns in the rocks, the way the sunlight reflected off distant stones, the subtle changes in the wind. It was as if the journey itself had become a lesson, teaching her patience, awareness, and the importance of careful observation. By midday, they reached a plateau overlooking a wide canyon. The view was breathtaking, with cliffs stretching far into the distance and shadows moving across the rocks below. Leela paused, feeling a mixture of awe and relief. They had come far, and the sight of the canyon made the challenges they had faced seem worthwhile. "It's amazing," she whispered, unable to take her eyes off the view. The cowboy stood silently beside her, letting her enjoy the moment without interruption. There was a quiet respect in his presence, a recognition that some experiences were meant to be savored in silence. As they continued along the edge of the plateau, the path grew narrower with steep drops on either side. Leela's heart raced slightly, but the cowboy's calm guidance helped her stay focused. "Keep your center of balance," he advised. "Don't rush. One step at a time." She followed his instructions, moving carefully and deliberately. With each step, her confidence grew, and she began to feel a sense of accomplishment. The desert, once a source of fear, now felt like a place of possibility, a landscape where she could test her limits and discover her own strength. By late afternoon, they reached a small oasis, a hidden patch of greenery with a shallow stream and a few scattered trees. The sight of water and shade was a welcome relief. Leela sank to the ground, letting the cool grass brush against her skin and listening to the gentle flow of the water. The cowboy set down his pack and began to prepare a small area for them to rest. "We'll stay here for a while," he said. "It's safe and you need to recover before continuing." As they rested, Leela felt a sense of gratitude deepen. She had been alone, struggling against the desert's harshness, and now she was learning the value of trust and companionship. The cowboy had not only rescued her physically, but had also helped her navigate the emotional challenges of fear and uncertainty. She realized that her journey was no longer just about exploration. It was also about connection, about learning to rely on others while discovering her own resilience. The afternoon passed quietly, with the cowboy checking the water and ensuring their shelter was secure. Leela watched him, feeling a mix of admiration and curiosity. She had never met someone so calm, so skilled, and so attentive. There was a quiet strength about him that made her feel safe, even in the vast, unpredictable desert. As the sun began to dip toward the horizon, painting the sky with shades of orange and pink, Leela felt a sense of anticipation. The desert still held challenges, but she was no longer afraid. With the cowboy by her side, she felt ready to face whatever lay ahead. Night fell again, cooler and more comfortable than the previous night. They sat by the small fire, sharing stories and laughter, their bond growing stronger with each passing hour. Leela realized that she had found a companion she could trust, someone who understood the desert and respected her courage. The journey ahead remained uncertain, but for the first time, she felt a sense of excitement rather than fear. The desert had tested her, challenged her, and brought her to someone who could guide her through both its beauty and its dangers. The desert morning arrived cool and quiet, with a gentle breeze moving across the rocks and sand. Leela woke to the soft chirping of birds and the distant rustle of small animals. She stretched carefully, her legs still a little stiff but much stronger than the day before. The cowboy had already risen, moving quietly to tend the fire and pack their belongings. His calm efficiency had become familiar, a comforting rhythm she now relied upon. "Good morning," Leela said softly, rubbing her hands together to shake off the chill. The cowboy glanced at her, tipping his hat slightly. "Morning." "Ready to continue?" His tone was calm, steady, and filled with quiet assurance. Leela nodded, feeling the anticipation of a new day. She had recovered enough to walk confidently, though she was aware the desert could challenge her at any moment. They set off together, moving through rocky paths that twisted and turned with sudden steep inclines. Leela followed closely, careful to watch every step. The cowboy was always near, guiding her, offering advice when the path grew uncertain. "Shift your weight here," he would say, "or hold onto that rock for balance." Each instruction was precise and simple, yet it carried the kind of authority that made her feel safe. As they walked, the desert seemed to grow more alive. Birds swooped low, insects buzzed near flowering shrubs, and the wind carried a faint scent of earth and distant water. Leela noticed the small details, the textures of the rocks and the subtle colors of the sand. She felt a deep appreciation for the cowboy's knowledge, realizing that his awareness of the land was more than skill. It was respect for the desert and all its creatures. By midday, the sun was high and the heat began to press down. Leela's pace slowed, but the cowboy stayed beside her, offering water and guidance. "Don't overexert yourself," he said. "We need to keep your strength for the journey ahead." Leela took his advice seriously, realizing that pride and stubbornness could be dangerous here. She sipped water, catching her breath, and felt a growing sense of trust and reliance on him. The path led them to a narrow canyon, shadows stretching across the ground. The rocks on either side were jagged and steep, and the space between them was tight. Leela felt a flicker of anxiety as she looked up and down the canyon, wondering how challenging the passage might be. The cowboy noticed her hesitation and placed a steadying hand on her shoulder. "We'll go slowly. I'll be right here," he reassured her. His calm presence eased her fear, giving her the courage to continue. Step by step, they made their way through the canyon. Leela's muscles ached, and her breath came faster than usual, but she focused on the cowboy's instructions, moving carefully and deliberately. Each section of the canyon tested her balance and patience, forcing her to remain alert. She realized that fear was natural, but it could be managed with caution and guidance. The cowboys' quiet support made the challenge feel achievable rather than overwhelming. Suddenly, a loose rock shifted under Leela's foot, sending a small cascade of stones down the canyon wall. She froze, her heart pounding, but the cowboy reacted immediately. He grabbed her arm and pulled her slightly to the side, keeping her safe from harm. "Careful," he said quietly, his voice firm but gentle. "Always check the ground before stepping. The desert can be tricky." Leela swallowed hard, her pulse still racing, but she felt grateful for his quick reaction. Without him, the situation could have been dangerous. After navigating the canyon, they emerged into a wide valley, with sunlight illuminating the golden sands and rocky hills stretching endlessly. Leela paused, taking in the beauty around her. The challenge of the canyon had left her breathless, but the sight of the open valley filled her with renewed energy. The cowboy stood silently beside her, watching her reaction, and for a moment, there was a shared sense of accomplishment between them. They had overcome a difficult obstacle together, and it deepened the unspoken bond forming between them. They continued across the valley, the heat growing stronger as the afternoon approached. Leela's muscles were tired and her energy waned, but the cowboy's steady pace and encouraging words kept her going. "We're almost to a better resting spot," he said. "Just a little further and you can recover." The promise of relief gave her renewed determination. Step by step, they moved forward, their shadows stretching long across the sunlit ground. As they approached a cluster of large rocks, Leela noticed something unusual, a sudden dark shadow moving across the sand in the distance. She squinted, unsure what it was, and her heart skipped a beat. The cowboy followed her gaze, his eyes narrowing slightly. "Stay close," he said calmly. His voice carried no panic, only caution. Leela instinctively moved closer to him, feeling both reassurance and curiosity. The desert had been unpredictable so far, and she understood that vigilance was necessary. The shadow grew closer, revealing itself as a small herd of wild goats moving across the valley. Leela exhaled in relief, laughing softly at her own fear. "I guess it was nothing dangerous," she said, her voice light but still tinged with lingering tension. The cowboy smiled faintly, the corners of his eyes crinkling. "Better safe than sorry," he replied. "The desert teaches you to expect the unexpected." They continued on, finally reaching a sheltered area near a small cliff face. The spot offered shade and protection from the heat, with a small patch of soft sand where they could rest. Leela sank to the ground, grateful for the respite. The cowboy set down his pack and began to prepare a small area to sit and eat. He moved with practiced ease, gathering small stones to create a windbreak and arranging some dry wood to spark a fire. Leela watched, feeling a sense of admiration and gratitude for his skill. As they rested, Leela reflected on the journey so far. She had come to the desert seeking adventure, but she had found more than she expected. She had faced fear, pain, and uncertainty, yet she had also discovered resilience, courage, and the unexpected support of a companion. The cowboy had shown her not only how to navigate the physical challenges of the desert, but also how to manage her own fears. She felt a bond forming, a connection built on trust and shared experience, even though they had only known each other for a short time. The afternoon passed quietly, with the cowboy tending the small fire and checking the surroundings. Leela felt a mixture of relief and anticipation. She was grateful for the rest, but she also knew that the journey ahead might bring new challenges. The desert was unpredictable, and each step could test her strength, patience, and determination. Yet she felt ready. With the cowboy by her side, she believed they could face whatever obstacles lay ahead. As the sun began to dip toward the horizon, the light changed, casting long shadows across the valley and painting the rocks with shades of orange and red. Leela sat quietly, watching the colors shift and marveling at the beauty of the desert. The cowboy remained near the fire, his presence steady and reassuring. There was a sense of calm and safety in the moment, a pause in the midst of their ongoing journey. Night fell, bringing cooler temperatures and a blanket of stars across the sky. Leela lay on a small blanket, feeling the warmth of the fire and the steady presence of the cowboy beside her. They spoke quietly about their journey, sharing stories and observations, each finding comfort in the other's company. Leela realized that she had come to rely not only on his skill and guidance, but also on his companionship. The desert, with all its challenges, had brought them together, forging a connection that was both practical and emotional. As they prepared to sleep, Leela felt a sense of anticipation. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new obstacles, and perhaps new discoveries, but she felt stronger, braver, and more confident than ever before. The journey had tested her in ways she had not expected, yet it had also revealed her resilience and her capacity to trust and connect with another person. The desert, once a place of danger and isolation, had become a landscape of possibility, growth, and companionship. For the first time, Leela allowed herself to relax completely, feeling a sense of safety and connection. The fire crackled softly, the stars twinkled overhead, and the desert whispered its quiet songs. She knew that the journey was far from over, but she felt ready to face whatever lay ahead. And beside her, the cowboy remained vigilant, a steady presence in a vast and unpredictable world, reminding her that sometimes the greatest strength comes not from facing the world alone, but from finding someone who walks beside you. Morning broke over the desert with a soft, golden glow, casting light across the rocky hills and valleys. Leela woke slowly, feeling rested despite the exhaustion of the journey so far. Her leg, though still a little stiff from the accident days ago, felt much stronger, and she knew she was ready to continue. The cowboy had already risen, moving quietly as he checked their small camp and prepared for the day. The rhythm of his movements felt familiar now, steady and reassuring, and Leela felt a sense of comfort in his presence. "Good morning," she said softly, stretching and brushing off the sand that clung to her clothes. The cowboy looked up and gave a small nod. "Morning, ready for another day?" His voice was calm, steady, and filled with quiet assurance. Leela nodded, taking a deep breath of the crisp desert air. She felt both anticipation and confidence, knowing that with his guidance she could face whatever lay ahead. They set off together, moving across the uneven desert terrain. The sun was not yet high, making the walk easier, though careful attention was still necessary. Leela followed closely, trusting the cowboy's knowledge of the land. Step by step, they navigated loose rocks, narrow paths, and gentle slopes, the desert gradually revealing its beauty in the soft morning light. Birds flitted from shrub to shrub, and small animals darted through the sand, all adding to the quiet rhythm of the morning. As they walked, Leela reflected on the journey so far. She had started her adventure seeking excitement and exploration, but what she had found was far more profound. The desert had tested her courage, patience, and resilience. It had forced her to confront her fears and acknowledge her limits. Yet, in the midst of these challenges, she had also discovered trust, companionship, and the quiet strength of someone willing to walk beside her. The cowboy, with his calm guidance and unwavering attention, had become more than a helper. He had become a mentor, a protector, and unexpectedly, a friend. Around mid-morning, the path led them to a small ridge overlooking a wide, sunlit valley. Leela paused, taking in the breathtaking view. Golden sands stretched for miles, dotted with rocky outcrops and occasional clusters of desert shrubs. The shadows of the rocks moved slowly across the valley floor, creating a sense of motion and life. Leela felt a wave of gratitude wash over her. The challenges of the past days, the fear and uncertainty, all seemed worth it in this moment. She felt a deep connection to the land, to the journey, and to the companion who had guided her through it. The cowboy stood silently beside her, watching her reaction without interrupting. There was a quiet respect in his presence, a recognition that some experiences were meant to be savored in silence. Leela smiled softly, feeling a bond between them that went beyond words. The desert had tested them both, but it had also brought them together, creating a shared understanding that was both comforting and inspiring. After a short break, they resumed their journey, moving carefully through a narrow canyon that led deeper into the valley. The terrain was challenging, with steep inclines and loose stones, but Leela felt confident in her ability to navigate it. The cowboy's instructions were precise and calm, guiding her safely through each obstacle. "Shift your weight to the left here," he advised, "or step on the larger stone, it's steadier." Each piece of advice was delivered with patience, and Leela found herself relying on it, learning to trust both her own instincts and his guidance. As the day wore on, the sun climbed higher, bringing heat and light to the desert. Leela's energy waned, but she remained determined to keep moving. The cowboy stayed close, offering water and encouragement when needed. "You're doing well," he said, his voice calm and reassuring. "Keep going, we're almost at a good resting spot." Leela felt a surge of determination, inspired by his confidence and the steady rhythm of their shared journey. By afternoon, they reached a small oasis tucked between rocky hills. The sight of water and shade was a welcome relief. Leela sank to the ground, letting the cool grass brush against her skin and listening to the gentle flow of the stream. The cowboy set down his pack and began to arrange a comfortable resting area, gathering small stones for a windbreak and rekindling a small fire. Leela watched in admiration, appreciating not only his skill but the thoughtfulness with which he prepared their space. As they rested, Leela reflected on how much she had grown during this journey. She realized that the desert had taught her lessons she had never expected. It had shown her the value of patience, the importance of trust, and the strength that comes from facing challenges head-on. She had discovered resilience within herself, and she had learned that asking for help was not a sign of weakness, but a path to safety and growth. The cowboy spoke quietly, sharing stories of his own travels and experiences. Leela listened, fascinated by the wisdom and perspective he brought. He had faced his own challenges and learned to navigate them with patience and care. Leela felt inspired, realizing that the lessons of the desert extended beyond survival. They applied to life itself, teaching lessons about courage, trust, and the human spirit. As the sun began to dip toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange, pink, and purple, Leela felt a sense of peace. The desert, which had once seemed harsh and intimidating, now felt like a place of beauty and possibility. She had faced fear, endured pain, and relied on another human being, and through it all, she had discovered not only her own strength but the strength of companionship. Night fell over the valley, bringing cooler temperatures and a blanket of stars. Leela lay on a blanket, listening to the desert's quiet sounds, the rustle of leaves, the distant call of animals, and the soft crackle of the fire. She felt a sense of safety and calm, knowing that the cowboy remained vigilant beside her. The journey had been challenging, but it had also been transformative. She had learned to trust, to adapt, and to face uncertainty with courage. In the quiet of the night, Leela realized that her adventure was more than a physical journey. It was a journey of self-discovery. She had started seeking excitement and exploration, but she had found connection, resilience, and understanding. She had learned that the desert, like life, was unpredictable, but with patience, trust, and determination, challenges could be met and overcome. The cowboy remained near, a steady presence in the vast and unpredictable landscape. Leela felt gratitude and admiration for him, recognizing the importance of having someone who could guide, support, and share in the experience. She understood that while she had grown stronger and braver, the journey had also been shaped by his calm presence and careful guidance. As they prepared to sleep, Leela felt a sense of completion and reflection. The accident, the fear, the challenges, they had all been part of the journey that led to this moment. She had discovered not only the beauty of the desert but also the strength within herself and the value of trust and companionship. She looked at the cowboy, silently acknowledging the role he had played in her growth. He met her gaze, a quiet understanding passing between them, and she felt a deep sense of connection that words could not fully express. The night passed peacefully, with the stars shining brightly above and the desert's gentle sounds providing a soothing backdrop. Leela slept soundly, feeling a sense of accomplishment and inner calm. She knew that the journey was far from over, but she also knew that she had the strength, wisdom, and support to face whatever came next. When morning arrived, the desert was bathed in soft light once again. Leela woke with renewed energy, her leg fully recovered for the first time since the accident. She stood, stretching and looking out over the valley, feeling a mixture of gratitude, anticipation, and confidence. The cowboy was already awake, preparing for the next leg of their journey. Leela joined him, ready to continue, knowing that the desert, with all its challenges and beauty, had transformed her in ways she could not have imagined. Together, they set off once more, walking side by side through the vast landscape. Leela felt a sense of accomplishment and pride, knowing that she had faced fear, endured hardship, and grown stronger because of it. She had discovered the power of trust, the importance of companionship, and the resilience within herself. The desert, once a place of danger and uncertainty, had become a teacher, a guide, and a place of transformation. As they moved forward, Leela realized that the journey was about more than reaching a destination. It was about the lessons learned along the way, the challenges overcome, and the connections formed with those who walked beside her. She felt a sense of gratitude for the cowboy, for the guidance, and for the experiences that had shaped her journey. The desert, with all its beauty and danger, had left an indelible mark on her heart and mind, teaching her lessons she would carry for a lifetime. And so, with the sun rising behind them and the vast desert stretching ahead, Leela and the cowboy continued their journey together. They faced the unknown with courage, trust, and companionship, knowing that the challenges ahead would only strengthen their bond and their understanding of the world around them. The desert had tested them, transformed them, and taught them the value of resilience, trust, and the quiet power of shared experience.